Chess isn't for poor people. The reigning grandmaster's voice rang out across the hall as Anna Turner walked in thick glasses, a pale shirt, and a canvas bag wrapped around a worn chess notebook. "Let's play quickly so you don't miss your bus," her first opponent sneered, slamming his pieces onto the board. No applause. When she sat down, only judgmental glances, all waiting for her to make a mistake. But a few hours later in that same room, only silence remained as they watched the final move of the woman they once treated as invisible. The room carried a tense hush, broken only by the scratching of wooden chairs against polished floors. Tournament officials wandered between rows of boards, whispering instructions to each other. The audience, perched on folding seats encircling the main tables, seemed eager for any sign that Anna might falter. She removed her canvas bag from her shoulder with slow precision, revealing a small wooden chess set inside. At the registration desk, when she had requested to use her own pieces, someone had waved her off, telling her that only serious boards would be allowed. That last phrase had stirred a ripple of laughter from a group of watchers who seemed more fascinated by her timid posture than any notion she could actually compete. Anna set the bag under her chair. Her pale shirt hung loosely, the collar slightly frayed, and her thick glasses reflected the overhead lights in a way that hid her eyes. A balding arbiter in a crisp blazer approached, frowning at her. "Didn't we tell you that personal sets are disallowed on stage?" His voice carried enough volume to draw a few sidelong smirks from spectators. Anna paused, offering him a single nod. She tucked the small wooden pieces back into their faded cloth pouch. The arbiter's lip curled in mild disdain before he turned away, as though dealing with her were an inconvenience. Nearby, a female player with a sponsored jacket covered in embroidered logos gave Anna a dismissive glance. "You look like a rural math teacher who hopped on the wrong train," the woman remarked, gesturing pointedly at Anna's well-worn shoes. Murmurs of agreement passed through the rows of onlookers. Anna lowered herself into the chair, hands folded on her lap, face expressionless. The overhead lights were merciless, shining down on a stage where each match was played under watchful eyes. Off to one side, a lounge area held elegant refreshments. Grandmasters exchanged pleasantries, sponsors chatted up potential deals, and journalists hovered, penning notes on the big names they expected to see in the final rounds. Not one reporter approached Anna. She sat in the midst of that grandeur like an afterthought. Her first opponent, a local celebrity known for flamboyant commentary, twirled a bishop between his fingers. "Let's not drag this out," he said loudly enough for the nearest spectators to hear. "I'll play fast, you can resign quickly, and we'll both save time." A few chuckles followed. Anna showed no visible reaction. She adjusted her glasses, then reached into her canvas bag and retrieved a battered notebook. The cover was peeling, the edges darkened by repeated handling. She opened it carefully, scanning a few lines of notation that were written in neat, tidy script. The pages were stuffed with loose sheets, old puzzle diagrams, partial game scores, and sketches of openings. The opponent lifted an eyebrow. "You think a second-hand note collection is going to help you?" he said, half laughing, half mocking. A faint hush fell. The arbiter, noticing the holdup, gave a short nod for them to begin. The digital clock started ticking, and the man in front of Anna unleashed a flurry of opening moves. He slammed down pawns and knights with flair, confident that she'd topple under pressure. Each time he pressed the clock, the loud click reverberated. Several watchers in the front row exchanged knowing looks, another easy victory for the local star. Anna, however, moved at her own measured pace. She placed each piece gently, never letting it clack against the board with the same force as her opponent's. She waited for him to commit to a line, then responded with a subtle shift in her formation. A memory seemed to flicker in the background of her posture, the way she touched a bishop, reminiscent of someone meticulously setting a piece on a small, handcrafted board. At one point, a faint glimmer of emotion passed over her face as she turned her queen sideways, but it vanished before anyone could truly see it. Those in the audience grew bored, whispering to each other that the game had no fireworks. They wanted showy moves, dramatic sacrifices. All they got was a slow, methodical flow of pieces across the squares. Then, without warning, the man's aggressive rook found itself trapped behind Anna's minor pieces. She had her knights placed in quiet synergy, cutting off each of his attempts to free that rook. A startled hush spread through the watchers who were paying attention. The opponent frowned, tapping the clock repeatedly, but soon realized he was slipping into a tactical snare. He shoved a pawn forward, hoping to break her line, but Anna captured it in a straightforward exchange that left him forced to sacrifice another piece. The watchers shifted, leaning in. A murmur of surprise rippled among the seats. After 10 more moves, the local star's position collapsed. In a fury, he toppled his own king on the board. His face burned with embarrassment as a smattering of confused applause arose. Someone muttered, "She actually won." Another voice, "He must have blundered." The man refused to meet her gaze as he stood and stalked off. Anna closed her notebook, gave a polite nod to the arbiter, and left the stage as quietly as she had arrived. But that was only the beginning. The event's format required players to continue in a round-robin arrangement, ensuring everyone met everyone else at least once. Each time Anna took her seat, new taunts greeted her. A middle-aged grandmaster drummed his fingers on the table. They must have been really desperate to let in the chess librarian. A sponsor's assistant shook her head at Anna's simple outfit. "I thought this was a professional tournament, not a county fair." Even the arbiter let out a small laugh when Anna returned to the stage with that same battered notebook. Still, she uttered no rebuttal, no quick retort. She only sat, arranged her pieces, and began. Match after match, she displayed an unhurried style, quiet development, patient maneuvers, carefully orchestrated endgames. Some spectators found it dull drifting off to watch more flamboyant players. Yet as the day wore on, word spread that the mousy woman with the notebook kept defeating well-known competitors one by one. A few watchers started lurking behind her table, hoping to see how she managed it. They saw subtle knight reroutes, quiet pawn pushes, cunning trades that left her opponents baffled. She was no speed demon, but her board sense was impeccable. In a tense afternoon match, she faced a woman who had publicly dismissed her earlier. That player liked to talk during the game, harmless chatter to throw opponents off balance. But Anna never engaged, never flinched. Half an hour in, Anna pinned the woman's key pieces against each other with a sly bishop move. The watchers inhaled sharply as the situation turned catastrophic for the arrogant competitor, who found her queen forced into a losing trade. When the woman realized her position was hopeless, she jerked out of her chair and stormed off in disbelief, leaving Anna to calmly sign the results sheet. A ripple of confusion coursed through the hall. The press staff hesitated should they record these upsets or dismiss them as flukes. During one of the breaks, Anna sat alone in a corner, flipping through that old notebook. A faint sound of laughter from another side of the lounge made a few onlookers glance her way. She appeared not to notice. Sometimes her fingertips rested on a particular page where lines of chess notation mingled with a short note in a language that wasn't English. It looked like an older set of instructions, perhaps from a mentor. The pages bore a faint tea stain. Anna closed the book gently as an official brushed past her, carrying a tray of water bottles. The official looked her up and down, then quickly turned away as if uncertain how to acknowledge her presence. Later that day, Anna's next opponent was the flamboyant champion who had mocked her the moment she walked in. He arrived surrounded by admirers, a swirl of cameras used for local coverage. Not any online feed, enthusiastic kids wanting autographs, and a small cluster of sponsors who pinned their hopes on his performance. He pointed at Anna, then addressed the cameras with a grin. "We have a Cinderella story here, folks, but let's be real. An unknown can't handle real championship pressure." A few people smirked behind him, nodding. Anna placed her notebook on the table, adjusted her glasses, and carefully aligned her white pawns. The champion laughed as he took his seat. "I'll try not to make this too quick," he said, cracking his knuckles. The game began. He opened with a flashy line known for sharp tactical battles. Anna replied quietly, each move revealing a calm strategic approach. Over the next hour, the champion's smirk faded. Every time he launched an attack, he found a well-timed defensive resource waiting. Each attempt to break her lines led to a silent dead end. A small crowd formed around their table, breath catching in their throats. The champion made an exasperated gesture when Anna advanced a humble pawn, blocking his bishop from entering a critical diagonal. Another group of spectators marveled at how seamlessly she transitioned from defense to attack, not with fireworks but with patient buildup. 20 minutes passed. The champion stared at the board with mounting frustration. His rook was pinned down, his bishop locked out by his own pawns. Anna's queen hovered poised for infiltration. The watchers could sense an impending collapse. One of the grandmasters who had laughed at her earlier muttered something under his breath, eyes locked on the board. At last, after a final, desperate lunge, the champion realized Anna had forced him into a losing endgame. She extended her hand for a handshake, and a hush swept the crowd. He refused to look up, pressing the clock in a futile attempt for more time. But the position was gone. A few moves later, he toppled his king and pushed back from the table furious. Anna offered the quiet courtesy of a head tilt. The champion marched away, ignoring the sudden wave of shocked commentary. By nightfall, Anna was undefeated. The scoreboard posted by the arbiters left no doubt she had beaten multiple top seeds emerging from nowhere to claim a spot in the final bracket. Even the dismissive female star who had mocked Anna's clothes earlier found herself gaping at the results. A swirl of speculation spread through the hall. Who was this woman? Did she cheat somehow? That notion was quickly dismissed. There were no suspicious devices, no unusual interactions. She simply came, moved her pieces, and won with a style that looked old-fashioned, yet devastatingly effective. In one corner of the lounge, two older men whispered about rumors from years past, some incredible child prodigy who vanished from the global circuit after personal misfortune. Another group overheard them rolling their eyes. Ridiculous rumor, they said. She's too young to be that old legend. Or maybe she's too old to be that child genius. It makes no sense. Meanwhile, Anna walked along the edges of the hall, collecting a cup of tea from a side table. People stepped out of her way, uncertain whether to congratulate or interrogate her. She simply found a quiet seat, set her tea down, and removed the battered wooden set from her canvas bag. Placing a few pieces on the table, she reproduced a position from her last game, her fingertips sliding over the worn squares. A faint tremor flickered across her face, gone as soon as it arrived. When the final day dawned, it was time for the championship match, a showdown that would decide the entire tournament. Newspapers had begun covering Anna's improbable run, though, with minimal detail. A hush gathered in the giant convention center as spectators packed the seats for the final game. Banners hung overhead listing the big sponsors. The reigning champion was set to defend his title, but shockingly, he'd already been knocked out by Anna the day before. Instead, the path had realigned so that Anna would face another top contender, the same grandmaster who'd ridiculed her upon her arrival. This man was known for his crushing attacking style. Many believed he'd steamroll a nobody in a long match. Before the game, an arbiter approached Anna in the corridor carrying a slip of paper for her to sign. It authorized a brief introduction on stage, giving the crowd her hometown and rating. She read it, then carefully wrote a false name, Anna Turner. The arbiter peered at it, frowning. "Is that your full name? We had someone suggest you might be an unregistered foreign competitor." Anna gave the barest nod, refusing to elaborate. She handed the slip back, and the arbiter gave a shrug. "Suit yourself," he muttered, walking away. As she reached the final board, a wave of polite applause rippled through the audience, but most eyes were on her opponent. Dressed in a crisp, tailored suit, he basked in the attention, acknowledging supporters with a confident smile. He shot Anna a sidelong glance. "Ready for the big leagues?" he asked, just loud enough for the front row to hear. "I hope you've practiced." This is no amateur stage. People near him chuckled. Anna set down her notebook, placing it to one side. She adjusted her loose trousers, which had a small tear near one knee from countless wear. Then she pressed the digital clock to start. The first moves unfolded with an almost theatrical intensity. The Grandmaster advanced his central pawns, forcing complicated lines that required precise calculation. Anna replied with understated subtlety, letting him commit to each thrust before calmly neutralizing it. Tension mounted. After a while, the man's attacking push stalled, and the positions on the board locked into a closed structure. That was when the watchers noticed something. Anna was quietly maneuvering her knights around, setting up an encirclement that threatened to unravel his formation. A smattering of applause broke out as the audience recognized the clever plan. Suddenly, the Grandmaster unleashed a bold sacrifice, throwing a bishop into Anna's defenses. Gasps filled the room. He aimed to crack open her king's side, a tactic that had crushed lesser opponents. But Anna responded with a crisp sequence that turned his aggression against him. Rook for bishop knight to a perfect outpost, then a quiet queen move. In 3 swift maneuvers, she snuffed out his initiative entirely. The crowd grew silent. The Grandmaster frowned, leaning forward to examine the position. Anna's clock ticked softly as he realized he'd walked into a cunning trap. A hush spread through the spectators, deeper than any hush that day. Even the sponsors who'd gathered to cheer for their big star sat with parted lips, no words forming. The caretaker assigned to bring refreshments forgot to circulate, staring at the board. Step by step, Anna advanced her pawns. Her moves looked almost meek, tiny steps on the flank, yet each one limited her opponent's options. Like water wearing down a solid rock, she carved a winning endgame. The Grandmaster tried to find a last-ditch tactic, but there was none. In a final display of calm, Anna placed her rook on the 7th rank, attacking an undefended pawn that was the keystone of her opponent's position. The man stared at this board as if he expected it to change. Then he reached out and tipped his king. A wave of disbelief swept the hall. Someone in the front row rose to their feet, uncertain whether to clap or remain silent. Cameras clicked from the sidelines. The Grandmaster stood, offered a perfunctory handshake, then stepped back. The arbiter approached, halting the clock and confirming the result, Anna Turner winner. For several heartbeats, no one spoke. Then a roaring ovation erupted, starting from a small knot of spectators who recognized the magnitude of what had just happened. This unassuming woman, ridiculed for her outdated clothes and battered notebook, had conquered the entire tournament. The applause swelled, echoing off the convention center walls. Anna lifted her eyes, scanning the sea of stunned faces. She gave a small bow of her head as though expressing quiet gratitude, then gathered her pieces. Immediately, the tournament officials arranged a closing ceremony. A dais was set up at the far end of the hall with a microphone and a display table for trophies. The once arrogant champion stood off to the side, arms folded, wearing a tight-lipped expression. The female star, who had mocked Anna's rural teacher appearance, hovered near a curtain, uncertain whether to slip away or stay. And that cluster of grandmasters who had once laughed at Anna's request to use her personal set now looked anywhere but in her direction. Anna approached the dais with her usual composure, the battered notebook clutched under one arm. The master of ceremonies. A tall man in an elegant suit tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice trembling slightly with excitement. "What we've witnessed tonight is remarkable." An event director in the front row signaled for him to continue. "Our new champion won against all odds," the MC said. "She goes by Anna Turner in our records, but we have just learned her real name, Anna Tran." A shocked stir ran through the crowd. The man paused, collecting himself. Years ago, Anna Tran was considered Asia's brightest chess prodigy. Some called her unstoppable. But then she withdrew from international play, following a personal tragedy, disappearing from the scene. The hall erupted in murmurs, heads swiveling to stare at Anna. She looked as calm as ever, pressing her lips together in a restrained line. People who had dismissed her as a nobody felt a dizzying wave of realization they'd been mocking a once legendary figure. The MC continued. She refused interviews, turned down sponsorships, and as far as anyone knew, lived a quiet, private life. We never dreamed she'd step back on a major stage. Yet here she is, proving that greatness doesn't rely on fanfare or vanity. A new hush fell deeper and more reverent than before. The MC nodded to Anna, who stepped up to the microphone. She turned, slightly scanning the room. The same faces that had scorned her earlier now wore expressions of awe, embarrassment, and curiosity. Her voice was soft but steady when she finally spoke. "Thank you for allowing me to play," she said. "Sometimes silence and simplicity are the best disguises for intelligence. Don't judge a person by the clothes they wear or the name you don't recognize, because you never know who you're really playing until their final move." A wave of applause thundered through the hall, followed by a standing ovation. The people who had once laughed at her attire, her quiet manner, her battered notebook now pushed forward for a chance to shake her hand. A few offered apologies in hushed tones. The champion who had lost to her earlier stood stiffly, managing only a short nod before turning away. The female star from earlier approached with red cheeks and extended a trembling handshake. Anna accepted it, her expression kind, but no words left her mouth. At the awarding table, the silver trophy glinted under stage lights. The MC placed it in Anna's hands. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment. Those from the press scribbled furiously in their notepads, stammering questions that went unanswered. Anna held the trophy close, then set it down, revealing a small, respectful bow to the crowd. She gathered her battered notebook and stepped off the stage. The audience watched her walk down the aisle, feeling that intangible aura of calm that had characterized her every move. In the days after the tournament, the chess community buzzed with a single name. Some called her a recluse, others lionized her as the returning queen. Journalists scoured old archives to piece together her abrupt disappearance, tracking down rumors of a wealthy background of a powerful family of a father whose influence stretched far but never overshadowed her. They learned that she had spurned the easy glamour of professional sports, choosing instead to live modestly as a teacher in a quiet region few had heard of. Meanwhile, Anna continued her routine, rising early, preparing lessons for local school children, and occasionally opening her faded notebook to refine an endgame puzzle. It was rumored that a handful of newspaper reporters drove hours to find the small school where she taught, only to be turned away at the gates. Staff there simply shrugged and said she had no interest in interviews or publicity. If a child asked her about chess, she would smile and lead them to a makeshift chessboard in the corner of the classroom. Rumor had it she taught any student who showed curiosity, never accepting a dime in coaching fees. Word also spread that representatives from top chess sponsors had tried to contact her, offering lucrative deals and tours. She declined them all. One wealthy grandmaster who felt remorseful for his earlier insults arrived with a carefully wrapped set of gold-plated pieces, hoping to present it as a gift. Anna politely accepted the package, then left it unopened in the corner of the staff room, never once using it. People began to see that no matter how much prestige or money they dangled, it wouldn't change her. Some nights when the air was still and quiet, Anna would take out the small wooden set she'd brought to the tournament, the same one the arbiter had dismissed as a toy. She would set it up on a humble table in her modest living quarters. The pieces were carved in a style unique to a region across the ocean, each one bearing subtle marks of wear. If anyone observed her, then they might notice how she placed her hands lightly on the king and queen, as though remembering an old lesson. A faint recollection flickered in her stance, a memory of an older man's voice guiding her through complicated openings. Perhaps a father or a mentor, someone who had given her both knowledge and discipline. She never spoke of it, keeping the memory locked in the stillness of her midnight routine. Over the months that followed, participants of that national tournament shared stories of her unstoppable calm under pressure. Players who once sneered at her clothing now confessed that they felt more humility at the board. Even the female star who mocked her as a rural math teacher admitted in a private conversation that Anna's unwavering composure made her question her own obsession with image and sponsorship. A slow transformation rippled through the local chess scene. Arbiters tried to be less condescending to unknown entrants. Grandmasters reconsidered how they welcomed novices into high-stakes events. Some of the wealthy families who had children interested in chess began requesting private lessons from Anna, offering hefty fees. She turned them down or told them to donate the money to the local school's chess club instead. After receiving a series of polite rejections, one prominent father who recognized that Anna was from a background even more affluent than his was stunned by her humility. He commented quietly to a friend that he'd never seen someone from a position of such privilege live so modestly. The story took on new layers. Anna Turner, or Anna Tran, the wealthy woman who refused to flaunt her resources and who taught children in worn shoes and a faded shirt. Meanwhile, back at the Chess Federation offices, officials debated how to handle her sudden reemergence. They wanted to invite her to represent them in international competitions to bring prestige to the national team. Letters were drafted, phone calls made, but each time they received word that she was unavailable or not interested. Some found it baffling. Why would someone who could dominate the board choose to remain in obscurity? Others, recalling the fleeting glimpses of pain in her eyes at the tournament, speculated she carried some private sadness or vow, one that kept her from returning to the limelight for good. From time to time, rumors surfaced of smaller, unsanctioned chess meets in out-of-the-way places where Anna would appear. She might arrive in the same pale shirt and battered shoes, sign up last minute, and proceed to demolish the local competition in quiet, methodical fashion, only to vanish once the event concluded, leaving behind a hush of awe. It was said that she carried that old notebook everywhere, referencing lines nobody else recognized. Some watchers guessed it was filled with secrets from a legendary mentor. Others wondered if it was simply her own puzzle logs from decades of private study. Still, in every retelling of her story, one detail remained constant: her silence. She never bragged, never taunted, never demanded respect. Even when confronted with blatant condescension, she answered only through the pieces on the board. This aura of unshakable calm became an unspoken lesson for many older women in the audience, those who had faced a lifetime of judgments and dismissals, who had learned that shouting back often yielded nothing. Anna's composure offered a quiet vindication. Months after that national tournament, an official from the Chess Federation decided to host a commemorative event in the same convention center, a smaller gathering meant to celebrate sportsmanship and highlight the role of education in chess. They invited Anna, uncertain if she would attend. She slipped into the hall unannounced, wearing the same style of pale shirt and loose trousers, her glasses reflecting the overhead lights. The moment people recognized her, a respectful hush fell. She was asked to give a short demonstration for a group of children on a side stage. She stepped up, setting her battered wooden set on a rickety table. The children sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide. Without any flourish, Anna arranged a famous endgame puzzle that had stumped many masters over the years. She motioned for the kids to try a few moves. Some advanced pieces, timidly, others bolder, but each attempt ended in an incomplete solution. Anna then placed her hand on a single pawn, moved it one square, and guided them through a series of small, logical steps that concluded in a winning position. The children erupted in cheers, and a wave of applause drifted from the adults in the background. One of the instructors came forward, praising Anna in an emotional tone. "Thank you for sharing your knowledge," she said. "It means so much to these kids to see someone who overcame so much adversity." Anna only offered a slight incline of her head as though not wanting any special acknowledgement. Then she collected her pieces, folded her small board, and nodded farewell to the kids. That was all. She was gone before the evening speeches began. Later that night, 2 older women remained in the hall tidying up. They spoke in hushed voices about how Anna carried herself so self-contained, so unruffled by all the attention, good or bad. One of them recalled the humiliations Anna had faced at the tournament's start. The sneers about her clothing, the jokes about her being a chess librarian. They marveled at how she never once lashed out verbally. She just let her moves speak, whispered, one woman shaking her head in admiration. "That's a power I wish I had when I was younger." As the years passed, Anna's quiet presence became something of a legend. Occasionally, a new chess talent would claim unstoppable brilliance, only to be reminded of the time Anna walked into the hall, invisible and humble, and swept the field. Stories circulated about her family wealth. Some said her lineage was entwined with business empires in multiple countries, that she could have bought entire tournaments if she'd wanted. Others speculated that losing her mother at a young age, thus the tragedy that pulled her from the international circuit, had shaped her vow to remain out of the public eye. No one ever confirmed these rumors. Anna neither denied nor confirmed anything. And so the memory of that one moment when the final piece was placed and the entire hall fell silent remained a beacon of humility and the pure spirit of skill. The trophy, she claimed, still sat in the Federation's display case, engraved with the name Anna Turner. Below it, a small plaque read, "In memory of a triumph that needed no applause." People would stand by that case, recalling how she said so little yet taught them so much. Every once in a while, students in Anna's modest school asked if it was true she'd beaten the best players in the country. She would only shrug, directing them back to the board for practice. If pressed, she might quietly show them a puzzle from her notebook, the same battered pages that had guided her in lonely nights of study. Outside, the rustling of trees might spark a fleeting recollection of traveling by train to foreign tournaments in her youth, or the memory of a single rose laid at a relative's gravestone. She never spoke of it. She focused instead on the children's next move, gently placing a pawn or guiding their small hands to see the diagonal of a bishop. In the end, her story never morphed into a grand cinematic tale. There was no triumphant media coverage that turned her into a household name. She chose her quiet path, slipping back into the everyday. But for those who sat in that convention center and witnessed the final moment, everything changed. They understood that brilliance can wear humble attire, that a true champion doesn't always announce themselves with fanfare. Some of the greatest gifts are delivered in silence. It was said that one day a news reporter tracked Anna to a village school, hoping for an exclusive interview. She greeted him politely but offered no comment on her personal life or the tragedies of her past. He later wrote a short piece describing how her eyes held a distant calm, as though she'd seen all the illusions of prestige and decided none of it mattered. The story didn't gain much traction in the city, but older readers who saw it felt a stirring recognition. Anna's quiet victory was their victory too, a testament that no matter the judgments or humiliations, one can hold true to themselves and find their own way to triumph. The chess world, for all its politics and rivalries, kept her name in hushed reverence. Grandmasters who once scoffed at no-name opponents began recalling her example whenever they faced an unfamiliar face across the board. Check carefully, they reminded themselves. You never know who might sit in that chair. And the new wave of sponsors learned to hold their tongues before mocking a player's outward appearance. In a final gesture of gratitude, the tournament organizers quietly updated their entrance rules, ensuring no last-minute substitute would be belittled for personal items like homemade sets or notebooks. They called it the Anna Turner Clause, an unofficial nod to the woman who showed them how easily arrogance could be undone. Some found it amusing that they immortalized the name she'd used, rather than her real name, Anna Tran. But maybe that was fitting a reminder of how she walked in anonymity and walked out a champion, all under the same unassuming guise. Many months later, a group of children in that countryside school surrounded Anna, bursting with excitement about a local competition. They asked if she would come watch them play. She nodded, tucking her old notebook under one arm as they led her away. Along the path, a teacher whispered to a new staff member that Anna had once been the greatest chess mind in Asia, though you'd never know it by looking at her. The staff member stared at Anna's worn shoes, her plain shirt, the thick glasses. He turned to the teacher in disbelief, but the teacher only smiled, saying softly, "Wait until you see her move a piece." Outside the door, a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh grass swirling around Anna as she paused to let the children run ahead. In her calm footsteps and the way she clutched that battered notebook and the faint, unspoken dignity that colored every motion, there was a power that needed no words. And if you asked any of those who witnessed her victories in that grand hall, they would tell you. She came with nothing but her quiet skill, left with a trophy in her hands, and changed how they saw the game forever. Not through speeches, not through showmanship, but through a final move that shattered every prejudice laid against her. A few nights afterward, someone saw her alone at a classroom chessboard, adjusting the position of two pawns under the dim glow of a single lamp. She didn't speak. She simply studied the board as though practicing for some future opponent she might never face. Or perhaps remembering the father who once guided her moves, or a lost mother whose encouragement still echoed in her silence. When the moment ended, she slid the pawns into their box, gathered her notebook, and walked out. The door clicked behind her softly. In that click was the echo of her entire story, a reminder that real greatness can exist apart from fame or vanity, that an unassuming figure can step forward and with a single brilliant sequence turn the world's scorn into stunned respect. Some say her final words at the tournament linger in the hearts of all who were there. Sometimes silence and simplicity are the best disguises for intelligence. Don't judge a person by the clothes they wear or the name you don't recognize. Because you never know who you're really playing until their final move. Those lines drift like a gentle current through the chess community. They hold a hushed reverence, a quiet invitation to see beyond the surface. Even now, older women who once felt invisible in the world find a piece of themselves in Anna's story. Her presence lingers on the board, reminding us that humility is not weakness, and that true power often speaks in whispers. And so her lesson remains, a soft, enduring chord woven into the tapestry of the game she once left and now quietly reshaped forever.